The story of Colorado water laws concerned primarily with the prior appropriation system. Trade leases first option, however, to understand the fundamental tenets of that system, the prior appropriation system. I think first come, first serve, right? However, to understand the fundamental tenets of that system, one must also know something of the older European system it replaced, the riparian system. Trade leases second option. This chapter provides the basic building blocks for an understanding of Colorado water law by describing the historical development and fundamental attributes of the riparian system in Colorado's prior appropriation system. Subsequent chapters address development of the riparian system of water rights in Europe and the United States. Many civilizations around the world have tried to develop rules of water allocation and use that protect other water users, landowners, and public health. The Code of Hammurabi was one of the earliest written set of laws in the world, and it included provisions for the administration of water use. It was developed by King Hammurabi, 1810 to 1750 BC of Babylonia. He was known as the King of Justice in Mesopotamia, the region between the Tigris and Euphrates River, and portions of present-day Syria, Turkey, and Iraq. Hammurabi codified Babylonian laws and placed the country's body of law into orderly groups. Rules and punishments for theft, agriculture, water use, property damage, murder, death, and injury, as well as marriage rights and the rights of women, children, and slaves were included. Portions of the code are on display today on a stele of black diorite in the Louvre Museum in Paris. The entire Hammurabi Code contained 282 laws and was publicly displayed in Babylonia. It's the earliest known example of a ruler placing laws in public for all to see, even though very few people could read at the time. The stele on display at the Louvre was discovered in 1901. S-T-E-S-T-L-E. Stele, Louvre. 1901, it's 7.5 feet high, 6 feet in circumference. Like the San Luis Valley in Colorado, Mesopotamia receives only 8 inches of precipitation annually. Spring snowmelt from the Armenian mountains provided King Hammurabi's subjects with irrigation water. That's interesting. Conejos County is in San Luis Valley. An elaborate system of dikes and irrigation canals distributed water to fields. Flooding sometimes occurred and was addressed in the Code of Hammurabi. Section 56, if a man has released waters and so has let the water carry away the works of his neighbor's field, he shall pay 10 gur, G-U-R, unit of measurement of corn for every bur, which is a unit of land flooded. The Code of Hammurabi created some of the earliest legal controls over water and focused on preventing waste and carelessness. The code was written in stone to make the laws immutable, i.e. unchangeable. So, Section 56, if a man has released waters and let the water carry away the works of his neighbor's field, he released waters, and then the waters flooded the field, destroyed his crops, he's got to pay 10 gurs of corn for every bur of land flooded. So, I don't know who the hell's got 10 gurs these days, you know. The Roman Empire also developed an extensive system of law. It was the first civilization to view it as a science. In 528 AD, the Roman Emperor Justinian I, 483 to 565, ordered the compilation of all Roman laws of that time. This is known as the Justinian Code, also known as the Corpus Juris Civilis, or a body of civil law. It was the most elaborate compilation of laws in the world to that time. The Justinian Code, Roman Emperor Justinian I. Okay, sure. The Corpus Juris Civilis, the body of civil law. So we've got Hammurabi, we got the body of civil law. The code included royal edicts, laws adopted by legislative bodies, and interpretation of specific laws by judges. Within the Justinian Code, the concept of the riparian, from the Latin word ripa, meaning bank or shore, doctrine was developed. The riparian doctrine provided the framework for water law throughout the Roman Empire. It stated that water in a stream belonged to the public for fishing and navigation and could not be controlled by individuals. The owner of property along the stream, a riparian landowner, however, did have the right to make minimus, reasonable use of the water, a usufructuary right for milling, domestic and agricultural uses. Milling, domestic and agricultural uses. But this use could not injure others who use the stream for fishing or navigation. So you can use the water. Take the water for your crops. Take the water for whatever, for a bath, for milling. Just don't mess with the fishers and don't mess with the boaters. The riparian landowner had to return diverted water back to the stream unchanged in quantity or quality. Interesting. So once they used the farm or the domestic and then it goes back to the stream, the public use of the banks of a river is part of the law of nations, just as is that of the river itself. All persons, therefore, are as much at liberty to bring their vessels to the bank, to fasten ropes to the trees growing there, and to place any part of their cargo there, as to navigate the river itself. But the banks of the river are the property of those whose land they adjoin, and consequently the trees growing on them are also the property of the same persons. So the land and the trees are the private individual. They could bring their vessel to the bank of the land, tie their vessel to the trees growing there, and place any part of their cargo there, as long as they were navigating the river. Just so long as you know you're on somebody else's land. You're allowed to tie your boat to that land, but you're on somebody, so you can't do much. You can't do anything else. You can't fuck around unless you want to find out. Parts of the Roman Empire were located in humid climates with plentiful rainfall for crops, which made the riparian doctrine a workable set of laws in those regions. During times of drought, the riparian doctrine required that all water users share the limited resource, share and share alike. English common law developed later and was a compilation that evolved primarily from three sources: the Justinian Code of Roman Law, Teutonic Law, and the Napoleonic Code developed from English and French rulings. Okay, we're going into English common law. My God. Teutonic Law, Napoleonic, so Napoleon, Teutonic, and the Justinian Code of Roman Law. But what about the Hammurabi? We're not going to, English common law didn't take Hammurabi. English common law, laws common to all of England, evolved over centuries from thousands of court rulings handed down to settle specific disputes between individuals. These rulings relied on various aspects of the Justinian and Napoleonic codes and were used to guide decisions in future cases of similar or common nature called case law. Common law developed at the root levels of society and was not developed or imposed by a legislative body or a royal edict of a king. The general characteristics of the riparian doctrine of English common law are as follows. Riparian rights are of equal priority. Generally, the right to water is not quantified. Rather, it extends to the amount of water that can be reasonably and beneficially used on the riparian parcel. Riparian rights are correlative. That is, during times of water shortage, the riparian landowners share in any shortages. Water may be used only on that portion of the riparian land parcel that is within the watershed of the water source. The riparian right does not extend to seasonal storage of water. The riparian right is part of the riparian land and cannot be transferred for use on other lands. The riparian rights remain with the land when the land is sold. The riparian rights remain with the land when the land is sold. When riparian lands are subdivided, parcels that are severed from the adjacent water source lose their riparian rights unless the rights are reserved. The riparian right is not lost by non-use. French and English settlers along the U.S. eastern seaboard generally used the rules of the riparian doctrine that evolved from English common law. This system of water law continued to be the standard as settlement moved through the American Midwest in the first half of the 19th century. The riparian system was adequate in those humid locations where average annual precipitation was generally above 30 inches, similar to Western Europe. As settlers moved farther west in response to gold rushes in California 1849 and Colorado 1859, they brought the principles of the riparian system with them. However, miners and irrigators found that water supplies were too scarce to allow the application of the share and share alike principle inherent in the riparian doctrine. The Western pioneers were forced to develop new ways to allocate water. Development of the prior appropriation system. To understand the roots of Colorado's system of prior appropriation, one must begin in California in the summer of 1847. California settler and agriculturalist John Sutter was building an empire and he needed lumber. He and his employee, James W. Marshall, planned to build a mill on the American River near present-day Coloma, California. Thwarted for some time by a lack of labor, they eventually succeeded in convincing a group of soldiers from the Mormon Battalion to remain in California following their tour of duty and sign on as hired men. The fall of 1847, Marshall and the newly hired workers established a camp on the American River and commenced work on the mill. As the men excavated in the stream bed, Marshall became intrigued with the consistency of a rock bed exposed at the diversion for the mill race, a water channel constructed to power the mill's water wheel. According to James S. Brown, who worked with Marshall on the mill race, Marshall bent over the exposed rock early one morning prior to the commencement of the day's work, examined it, and stated, "This is curious rock. I am afraid it will give us trouble, and I believe there is gold in these hills."